This week's episode is different from what you've come to know. Instead of films of old and new, we watched a TV show. It came from our homeland up north and starring Vincent Price. And Billy Van has 8 characters, so that was pretty nice. Recorded in 1971, it ran for years and years, and despite the dour sets and fangs, it preyed on laughs, not fears. No what the fucks, or goods and bads, shall Mike and Sheldon speak, and sadly no murders here makes a very killless week. Though decent opening credits must take the place of gore and tits, the Hilarious House of Frightenstein is now on the graveyard shift.
Welcome to episode 72 of the Graveyard Shift Horror Podcast, where each week we usually watch a movie from the horror category, and we usually break it down into the good, the bad, and any other category we decide to make up along the way. We usually talk about the plot, some production details, and anything else we find fun or relevant. I'm your host Sheldon, and I never worked a graveyard shift alone. Please say hello to a guy that I usually host a show with, and I still am. My co-host Mike.
Hey everybody.
Mike, how are you today, my friend?
Well, I'm trying to get my sleep schedule back on track, so I'm a little running on empty, but I'm just dedicated to putting out stuff on time for our beloved listeners.
And that's not going to happen because everybody that listens to us regularly knows that we usually release an episode every Monday. It's currently Monday, almost 11 o'clock at night right now as we're recording. Yeah, we had a really fun time the past few days. I got incredibly sick. I had snot pretty much running out of any place snot could run out of for the past few days. Mike decided to try some kind of sleep experiment, and he still got himself totally fucked up. Yeah. It's only right now, at the past 10 minutes, that we decided that we're feeling well enough to try to record. So,
yeah, my experiment is, can I function on non-vampire hours?
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's going to be a fun episode for us, so I can't wait to see how this turns out.
Hey.
You're probably wondering why I said we usually watch a movie from the horror category and all those other usuallys I snuck into the intro. That is because we're doing something very different this week. A little bit of a departure from our normal format. A while ago, we were trying to think of something a little different to do for Halloween. If you guys have been with us since the start of the show, you know last Halloween we did an episode where we basically got a couple of friends with us and we talked about some Halloween memories. We did some listener emails, some requests, stuff like that. And we want to do something different for at least one episode during Halloween this year as well. And of course, Halloween for us is not one day, it's the entire month of October. And a friend of mine suggested, how about do something from your childhood, something that you liked from your childhood from Halloween? And I wanted to do that, but we kind of touched on that last year for our Halloween episode. We talked about, TV specials, the Charlie Brown Halloween special. I was going to say Christmas special. Jesus Christ. But there was something that I want to talk about, and this was something that I loved from my childhood. It's not really a Halloween thing, it didn't come out during Halloween, but it definitely had a Halloween theme to it, even though it was a weekly show. And I freaking loved it. When I was a kid, about 5-6 years old, is when I discovered horror movies. I became such a huge monster fan, and I just discovered this TV show that just fit the bill perfectly. It was something that became a big part of my childhood. I absolutely loved it, and so many people have not even heard of this show. And Mike, you were actually one of them.
Yeah, I had never seen the show, although, like, I do recall, like, channel surfing or seeing, like, clips of it in passing, but never was able to confirm what it was or, actually find an airing schedule.
Mm-hmm. And there was a reason for this. Now, I didn't know it at the time, but like I said, I discovered this show at about 5 or 6 years old. And I had no idea at the time, but this show was actually really old by the time I discovered it. In fact, it had been off the air for approximately
5 years.
more than 5 years, because the show actually premiered in 1971. So it was off for quite some time, possibly like 10 years before I discovered it. And, of course, a lot of you are not going to know what I'm talking about, but we are talking about a little Canadian kids TV show, variety show called The Hilarious House of Frightenstein. And, like I said, this was... it's such a piece of nostalgia for me. I love this thing. It was right up my alley because it was a monster-themed kids variety show. And when Mike said he didn't know much about it, so I couldn't wait to share it with him. I found some episodes on YouTube, shared it, and then Mike just shit all over it. Just took a big wet dump all over my childhood. But we're going to talk about what kind of stuff happened in the show and a few things from a few episodes that we watched on YouTube. But before that, just want to give you a little bit of information about the Hilarious House of Frightenstein. It was a show that premiered in 1971 in Ontario, Canada. Fairly low budget. It starred Billy Van. He produced, wrote, acted as, like 7, 8 characters in the show.
Yeah, 8.
Yeah, and there was some other, some other cast in there that played some characters as well. One of them, and I don't know how this happened, one of them is Vincent Price.
Yeah.
1971, Vincent Price is like already an established horror movie icon. And they got him for this show, this Canadian kids TV show.
Hey Vinny, how'd you like to spend 3 months in Canada reciting limericks in some odd dresses? Why, certainly, why not?
Pretty much, yeah. Now, what I don't even know how this show got made. Basically, from what research that we did, we discovered that Billy Van pitched this to. Oh my God! Was it in Canada? There's a network called, well, it used to be at least, CHCH TV. He pitched this show. He wanted to do a kids variety show, just something that they could slap on, like, Sunday morning, not during, the Saturday morning cartoons where they would actually have some competition. Just like early Sunday morning. Going to be a variety show, kind of like a skit show, but it's going to be monster themed. It's going to have like, a vampire, kind of Dracula-like host, with a kind of, what would you even call it?
I'd say it's like Wayne and Schuster and Hee Haw had a baby that turned out goth.
Ooh, if Wayne and Schuster, Hee Haw, and the Munsters had a baby.
Yeah,
like
they just had like a devil's three-way.
Yeah. So, this Canadian comedian and actor, Billy Van, he goes to CHCH TV, pitches this idea for this show.
And he's already, at this point, he was established by being on Sonny and Cher, right?
Right, yeah. He did a stint on the Sonny and Cher show. So he knew the ins and outs of this variety type show. And I don't even know if they thought that it was actually going to ever be made. He pitches it. They're like, sure, we're going to order 130 episodes.
Like that's confidence.
What the fuck? Who does this?
And we're going to film them all within 9 months.
Yeah, do you think like they're going to do season by season?
Not space it out over several years, get a cast that interacts with each other. No, we're just going to have a bunch of people, mostly speaking solo, maybe with another person who can barely fit inside a Volkswagen.
Yeah.
And that's at best. I only saw one episode, but tell me, did Vincent Price ever actually speak with anybody?
No, he did not interact with any of the other cast.
So it's possible they never even met Vincent.
Yeah, it is quite possible. Like, it was Vincent Price and just like a film crew. That was pretty much it.
It's like, okay, Vinny, here's some Shakespearean wardrobes. Just walk in, wear something, and then recite these limericks. Okay.
Yeah, so, they didn't do this in a standard TV format, like film season per season and see how it goes. They ordered 130 episodes. They recorded all 130 episodes over the course of 9 months and then, just released them week by week. One episode at a time.
And just hope they don't get canceled within the first 100 weeks or so.
Yeah. So, but what happened is this stupid little TV show that they thought was never going to be seen outside of Ontario. It got picked up by other TV stations across Canada, and even in the U.S. CBS Television was even one of the distributors of the show.
Ooh, it got an audience then.
Yeah, and which is kind of weird because I thought that, I talked to you and you weren't and I mean you grew up in Ontario and you were unfamiliar with the show. Then I speak to some people I know, some friends that are American, and they knew all about it. They're like, "Oh yeah, I used to watch this in the 80s when I was a kid. This 1970s monster-themed kids variety show."
I'm pretty sure it was probably airing at different times, but I was already watching either 60s Batman or Smurfs or something. My TV time was full. So I had no idea that this was on simply because I was watching way too much of other stuff.
That's right. So I looked up some information on it. That's where I got that is all 130 episodes were filmed over the course of 9 months. Vincent Price's parts were filmed over the course of the summer, so 2 months. They had Vincent Price for 2 months to record all of his parts, and he makes several appearances in each episode. Usually introducing the character that's going to be playing in the next skit. Because he had several skits. Each one would star a different character, usually played by Billy Van. These characters included the Wolfman, which was a werewolf disc jockey.
An obvious parody of Wolfman Jack.
Exactly. The Professor, which wasn't played by Billy Van. He was one of the characters that was actually played by somebody else who played this guy, Julius Summer Miller, who was actually a real professor. And he used to do little science lessons during that's what his skit was. Bowana Clyde Batty, who is a British explorer that kind of like a zookeeper.
Yeah, like a Professor Livingston type.
Exactly.
He's got the pith helmet, the walrus mustache.
So he would do a little thing each week. Would show you each episode would show you some things about a particular wild animal. Then we had the pet vet, which was a veterinarian who each week taught you about some domesticated animals, like something that you would actually have as a pet. We had Griselda, the ghastly gourmet. And holy shit, it was basically a parody of Julia Child because it was basically almost like a cooking segment, but with a witch, and just would do just the weirdest stuff. And I found out later because after we did some research for this, we found a documentary about the show, and apparently when they did this skit, the Griselda, the ghastly gourmet skit, the crew would just make up a bunch of like labels for the bottles and stuff, the ingredients. So when Billy Van was doing this skit, he had no idea about what he was going to be making or what ingredients were going to be in front of him.
Oh, he had no idea most of the time of what he was saying, because he said like only in the beginning like 30% of whatever they did was scripted.
Yeah,
and then it was down to 5 when they realized, hey, these guys can ad lib.
Yeah, like so much of this stuff was ad-libbed. It was amazing, and I think I found that Griselda was the funniest of all the skits, because it started off with like she looks like this normal, like, you know, the typical witch, the green skin, the big warted nose and stuff, and we would start off each skit seeing her walk into the kitchen cackling and stuff. So you think you're gonna get this gruff, like sounding grizzled witch, but when he started talking, it was like, ooh, I'm Griselda. Ooh.
We're going to be having such a lovely treat for you guys and girls today. It was like, you know who Griselda was? She was the aunt from Sleepaway Camp.
Exactly.
Or the aunt from Sleepaway Camp was Griselda.
There you go.
This came out first.
That is true. And then we had the librarian, who I thought for sure was, when I first saw this, I thought that he was the same guy that played Gomez Addams in the old Addams Family show. Just older, because it looked like him, kind of sounded like a bit like him if he was like, you know, a grizzled old man.
You thought he was John Aston?
I thought he was John Aston, yes. The first time I saw it, and then like after, you know, growing up and realizing, seeing it again, it's like, oh, that's obviously not him. That's Billy Van again.
Doing a great John Aston.
Yeah. And then we get into some of the some of these. Okay, it's a product of its time, okay, and it gets a little bit racially insensitive, we'll say.
Ooh,
because we have one called the Maharishi.
Oh, where he does, where he's basically Peter Lorre.
Now, was that the Peter Lorre one, or was that the Oracle? The Maharishi was the Hindu guru.
Ooh, there was another one?
Yeah, oh, you missed that one, huh? Might not have been in the episode that you saw.
I was burned out after episode 1.
Yeah, so you might not, like, they don't appear in every episode. Sometimes they, you know, change it up a little bit. But basically, he was a Hindu guru who shares bits of some, like, little wisdom bits. Like, he'd always start with, you know, playing a zithar and saying, "It is written." I got one. Okay, here's one, for example. It is written that he who kicks the blind beggar in the marketplace during an eclipse can only curse the camel for its lack of discipline.
Oh my god, he sounds like Hank Azaria from Mystery Men.
Yeah, kind of like that. And that one, like I said, certainly a sign of its time, because it's very racially insensitive, even including some makeup, we'll call it.
Oh my god, he did it in tan face?
Yeah.
Oh.
I didn't know at the time, like, watching this as a kid, I just didn't get that, you know, this was kind of not good. Now looking at it, while I still enjoyed most of the show, there was a couple of things that were kind of cringy. The Oracle, as well, the mystic who reads the horoscope from the crystal ball, and doing a damn good Peter Lorre voice, like you said.
Oh,
yeah. So there's always some kind of, he tries to read a horoscope, and there's always some kind of mishap. Usually, he always knocks over the crystal ball and smashes it, and then answers questions that were sent in by the viewers, which I don't think that was real, seeing as, like, they filmed all 130 episodes before the show even aired. So, and then of course there's some skits that involve puppets. And just a bunch of other stuff. Like, for one thing, there's a skit that involves someone in a gorilla suit. And
Yeah, I asked you to explain that to me, and you never did.
There's not much to explain. It was the same thing every time. The gorilla walks out of the woods, and no matter what, it always ends up the same way. Sometimes, like, it could be from a different item, but the gorilla always ends up getting hit in the head and then passes out.
Oh my gosh. First this, and then Tracy from the Ghostbusters. What the fuck was up with people with variety shows in the 70s and gorillas?
I don't know. And then there's a skit called The Mosquito. Mosquito comes.
Yeah, I saw that.
Basically, it's just like a drawing of a person's foot with as a background with superimposed in a scene where there's a guy in a mosquito costume that comes out, lands on the person's foot, tells a joke, and then starts biting the foot.
Yeah, mosquito and costume in the loosest sense of the words.
It vaguely looks like a mosquito.
I thought it was a spider at first. Then I'm just like, that spider is buzzing.
Yeah, and then of course you get some other characters like the Igor, of course, because you got to have. Well, okay, let's talk about Count. I'm not even talking about the main character, Count Frightenstein. He is the main host of the show. He's in 75% of the episode. He's the 13th son of Count Dracula, exiled to Castle Frightenstein in Frankenstone for his failure to revive Bruce. Bruce is kind of like a Frankenstein monster that is just laying dead on the table on this metal table every episode.
Possibly not even a person underneath.
Yeah, I don't think it was. And then, of course, you got his assistant, Igor. Just a huge bald guy in green paint. That...
played by, what was his name? Like, Shelarious or something?
Fishka or Fishka, something like that?
Yes. Shelarious.
Shelarious. So...
And he is a huge dude.
Yeah.
Like easily 350 pounds. And he... Fun fact about him, he drove a Volkswagen Beetle.
How? Like... As a skateboard? Like...
he must have like ripped out all the seats so that like he just like sits on it.
Oh my god! Yeah, I don't know how else he would do this. Okay, so like I said, I discovered the show when I was about 5 or 6. What really hooked me, because the first time I saw it, it opens up with just this creepy looking cemetery with a castle in the background with lots of thunder and lightning. And holy fuck, the first person we see, don't even see a person, all it is just a floating head. But goddamn, it's Vincent Price.
Oh yeah, and he's
a laughing Vincent Price, just like all of a sudden his head like just comes into focus on the screen.
Yes, with lightning and like a zither in the background. A zither or a tremolo? Theremin, that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
So it's pretty creepy. Like it could genuinely go for frights if it wanted to. It never did though.
No. And so Vincent Price, the show always opens with Vincent Price doing the intro. He recites this kind of poem that gives you the backstory of Count Frightenstein and the whole thing of what's going on, like the premise of the show. And it just goes into, he does his little poetic monologue. The theme music starts up, and holy shit, this is a catchy theme. I love this theme when I was a kid. It's a song called March of the Martians. And according to the Wikipedia entry, at least. And yeah, like it just goes. You get this intro, Vincent Price, this great theme song comes on, and shows like little clips of the show and everything like that, and then it starts up with always some kind of issue. Like the count's always having some kind of issue at the beginning of each episode that never really gets resolved. Like he never ever solves his problem. Like there's always something weird going on. Igor is an idiot that never understands anything. And yeah, it's a hard show to explain because it's, like I said, it's a variety show. Like it's not like it's got one certain theme throughout. It's just a lot of nonsense, really. And you can really see the difference because I like how looking at it through nostalgia goggles. I couldn't wait to talk about this show. Like I loved this as a kid. It was just right up my alley. It's right when I'm discovering monster movies, I discovered this show that's like monster themed. It's a variety show. It's got cheesy humor, which I absolutely loved. I was like such a fan of cheesy humor as a kid. So I couldn't wait to tell Mike about this. Like Mike is going to love this. This is going to be right up Mike's alley. And sent those episodes over. Mike watches it and just did not care for it at all. And then I realized, I'm like, how can you not like this? This is amazing. And then I'm watching it myself, and I'm like, okay, I can get it. My love for this is pure nostalgia. This is ridiculous. Like, it does have some, like, I can like it for the cheese factor, and the fact that it has Vincent Price, and that they just didn't care what they were doing. But, yeah, this is not something that you're going to see for the first time as an adult and think this is the best thing ever, for sure.
No. So I got, like, we don't have goods and bads, but instead, what I have in my notes is praise and complaints.
All right, that's a good way to do it, actually. So, okay.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
okay, first, the props and the makeup. You know, nice Canadian cheap budget, but, you know, the gorilla suit, not... Okay, well, that's probably not the best part, but the prosthetics that they put on Billy to transform him into a witch or a professor or a librarian, it's good. Mm-hmm. It's not like well, they tried using cheap latex before, and he's just like, no, fuck that noise.
Yeah. Because he said in the documentary, Billy Van said that at first it was basically just latex masks he had for each character.
And that did not fly.
Yeah, and so they actually got like a makeup and prosthetics guy come in that actually had used prosthetics that had movable parts, like they were put on piece by piece with lots of makeup, and that was much better. Considering that it was a very cheap 1970s kids show, I think it looked good.
Because they had like a New York prop master who did Hollywood shit.
Yeah.
So, I guess he taught them how to do their own shit for cheap, or like just sent them some modular makeup shit. So that was, hey, and you know, makeup is only as good as the person wearing it, and Billy definitely had that face to fill it out and give those characters individual traits.
For sure. He was great at, even with like the prosthetics and pounds of makeup on, he really sold the characters with his facial expressions. And not just the same thing, not like, hey, now I'm a vampire and I'm making this face, now I'm a werewolf and I'm making this face. Like, he had a different look and a totally different personality for each character that he played. And the character's personality just shone through. Like, it was no repeats of all, like, similar characters. Every character was very distinct, and not just, like, the voice suited it perfectly. His facial expressions suited each character perfectly. Like, he just nailed each one. And I think that's one of the things that appealed to me. I had no idea when I was watching this that I was watching like one guy play 8 different characters.
You thought it was just different people?
Absolutely.
I could see that. He was able to present different aspects of himself without looking like, and there it's just the same old guy in a wig.
And it makes total sense after seeing it with an adult when the credits would come up at the end, because it would say starring Billy Van, etc.
Oh, credit where credit is due.
Yeah, etc. And then it would show all the other all the other people that worked on the show. So yeah, absolutely, that was definitely a plus for me. I think they did a good job. I do realize too, after watching it now as an adult, that I was going to say the sets were awesome, and I realize now it was the same like stone castle wall backdrop in each of the sets, and they would just change some of the like the outer props, like some decorations. The only ones that were different were like the guy, the Dr. Livingston type person.
Yeah, because he was like in a jungle.
He was in a jungle, so they just make like a jungle backdrop and put him in that. Pretty sure everything else was like just, hey, here's our gray brick background, so now let's just throw some props in front of it.
Yeah, and it also had to do with the good cast. I mean, Billy Van as 8 out of 11 people on the show.
Yeah.
And apparently he, looking at the credits, he was also part of the creative team, so he was also doing some behind-the-scenes stuff as well. And then Vincent Price being Vincent frickin' Price, of course.
Of course.
He's going to knock it out, so...
They got Vincent Pricing.
Yep.
And it's fantastic. Like, I could watch just the Vincent Price parts alone. Vincent Price, like, doing a little introduction for every single segment. Like, that's genius. Like, just simply, like, I would love to have been part of a conversation where they get Vincent Price, like, they call Vincent Price and get him to be a part of the show. That would be the best thing ever.
Well, like, he just had a habit of, like, of not saying no to anything, and that's really the key to having an interesting life is, don't say no to anything. See what happens.
Yeah, just go for it. It's like, hey, Vincent Price, since you're a big horror movie icon, we're doing a low budget kids variety show in Canada. How'd you like to be a part of it? Sure, why not?
Yeah, why not? I don't have anything important going on. It's only the 70s.
Yeah. Well, I just got finished. Filming two different horror movies in the same year, but sure.
Yeah. And another thing I liked was the good teaching for children about animals, like with the safari guy, Dr. Pet Vet, and the professor, who was not Billy Van. And in the episode we saw, he was talking about how to chart rotations on a wheel on a graph using cycloids and trochoids. And also demonstrating air compression to pierce a straw through a potato.
Yep.
So that was like quite educational and inspirational. Like, this show had definite merit to it besides cheap, weird, inexplicable, poorly timed jokes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was complete and utter nonsense, but, like, there was actually some learning moments. The professor, the pet vet, both the animal segments were actually real things, and especially with the guy, the zoologist guy, I like the message there. And I don't want to get all, tree hugging, lovey dovey, and everything like that, but his message, as simplistic as it is, when it came to animals, remember, if you're going to shoot something, shoot it with a camera.
Yep. Even back then in the 70s, when people, I guess they wouldn't be expected to, be empathetic towards animals.
Mm-hmm.
Shit like that. Like, humanity pretty much seemed to only start around the 90s, 2000 era. But no, in the 70s, he's just like, hey, you know what? We don't have to kill animals. And you probably shouldn't. So, take pictures of them. They're great. Find out about them. They're amazing things.
Exactly.
So that was a pretty progressive message, at least for 1971.
Exactly. Yeah, true enough. Now, those were probably the only actual educational portions. As fun as they were the only educational ones. The rest was just nonsense, but...
It's not like Griselda's going to teach you how to actually cook.
No, you can't actually... Like, Jesus, one of the ingredients used in one of the recipes was actually arsenic. Just like a bottle of arsenic.
Just to give it a little sip.
Yeah, just a little thing of arsenic. That made it tangy.
You gotta offset it with a little cyanide and strychnine for balance.
So, okay, I gotta ask. Out of all the segments, all the different skits that they did, what was your favorite?
I guess I gotta say Dr. Pedvet, because he didn't just talk about animals, he brought one in. In the episode I did, he brought in a golden pheasant, which is a bird that resembles Donald Trump.
That's pretty accurate, actually.
And he had like a nice long cage so he could strut around. And that, like, this, even back then, 1971, like, progressive treatment towards animals. Instead of putting it in like a boxy cage where it has to stand still, he brought in like a large, like possibly heavy to move around, but it was long enough so that the bird could strut back and forth. Like, he actually was able to get some exercise, or at least room to move while being transported. And that showed like a degree of care for the well-being and the mental state of the animal, which I found quite heartening.
Mm-hmm. And you only saw this one episode, but the way this episode ended was how every single segment of the Pet Vet ended, where he would actually say he brought in this animal, and Igor could keep it as a pet. And Igor would be like, "Oh, thank you, Dr. Pet Vet. I'm just going to go check to see if I'm allowed to keep it." And Igor would walk off and he would speak to somebody off stage. And I can't remember the name of whatever he was talking to, but he was like, "Oh,
yeah, it wasn't the Count."
No, it wasn't a Count, but he'd ask somebody who's allowed to keep it, and whoever it was would respond with just like, very aggressive roars. You're like, "Oh,
I cannot be keeping it.
No, I cannot keep it. I cannot keep the pet." The pet. "Oh, okay. Well, that's too bad. Okay, well, I'll just take it back with me."
That was so sad.
Igor never got to have a pet. Hope they did it for like the final episode or something. Let him keep it. So, my favorite segment. I don't know why this was my favorite. Might be a tie. I really like the Wolfman. Because I was a fan of werewolves, and this just seemed so ridiculous that there was a werewolf DJ. And they would play, like, freaked me out about this thing. They would have him, like, doing, like, a guy in, like, dressed as a werewolf doing, like, a Wolfman Jack impersonation. And then he would play an entire song.
And, not even show a music video or anything. Now we're hitting my complaints. Because when I saw this section, I'm just like, oh, he's going to play like a clip from Three Dog Night? No, he plays the whole Joy to the World, which is a good song in and of itself.
Yeah.
But we are watching the lamest green screen silhouette dancing in front of a shaky camera filming TV static up close.
We basically got, like, a psychedelic backdrop on a green screen with shaky cam with Wolfman Jack and Igor doing, like, a dance routine.
A dance routine, again, used loosely.
Yes. Basically, they're just moving around on screen, like whatever dance moves, like whatever type of like jerky movement they decide to think of off the top of their heads.
It's like, how about you do some squats, and we'll call that a dance.
Yeah. Well, there's one episode that I watched where both of them come out with hula hoops and start hula hooping to the music. And Wolfman Jack comes out with a guitar, like a wolf guitar, and starts jamming. Yeah, so it's just utter nonsense. But like as a kid, I just liked that, and I was probably jumping up and like dancing around like an idiot with them.
I might have been into it too. It's just I think I may have been like in a permanently tired and cranky state for the week. But looking back on it now, it's less of a complaint and more of a. That was a bold choice.
Yeah, somebody made a conscious decision to do this, to include this.
My next complaint, I think, is a little more. Is a little more. Less bitchy and more with a point. There are like disjointed sketches, like this weird hippie Superman. The fuck?
Oh my god, yes, you're right. There's like all kinds of random bits from like all the characters from the skits are thrown into these little random bits between other skits. And then you get some things that pop up like characters that the only time you've seen them are these like little like 2-second little bits.
Yeah, they're 1 second asides where someone is saying something and then like another one will just like you'll see like little Pee-wee kind going, maybe, and then boom, it just continues going on with the rest of the sketch. It is, oh my gosh. Like there's one like where the ape who, like the one episode I saw, ape walks out through the grass into a clearing, throws down 2 dice, they come up like snake eyes. He like looks disappointed and walks away. And that's the entire fucking skit.
Yeah.
That was like, what the fuck? And I'm trying to watch the professor skit, and like it's just like having like an epileptic blink to another character who like he's just giving like a look to the camera, and then it cuts back to the professor doing his talk, and I'm like, what was this intentional?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, it was. No, you're absolutely right. Like that's it really made no sense. The show has so much nonsense. Just these nonsensical bits all in between all the skits. Like, and the skits were a lot of nonsense as well. But like, you get these little 2-second little flashes, and that Superman one, hippie Superman, is like this guy with huge blonde afro, like that kind of resembles what was that old show from the 80s, The Greatest American Hero or something?
Yeah.
Wearing a Superman costume, flying backwards.
Like he's just lying down in front of a green screen.
Exactly. And he would say something like that even as an adult listening to it, I don't even know what he said. Like it makes no sense.
I couldn't even write it down.
Just some hippie mumbo
was
jumbo.
This a joke? Is it even a joke? Is it funny? Am I missing it?
I think it's a joke, but I don't think it's funny.
I don't even know if he says things or if he's just like, oh, wow. And then it just... That's it.
Yeah. Okay, but now I gotta say there's one skit that I absolutely love, and that is the librarian. Because just this grizzled old man picks up a book and reads you a story. Like, I mean, not scary by adult, like measured as an adult, but as a kid, actually used to tell like some fairly scary stories. And all I could think about was like, can you imagine him, this guy, the librarian character, reading something like when you're a little kid, reading something like Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. That book series. That would have been fucking amazing.
Oh, it would have been good if our librarian actually had that. I think they did. Well, not scary stuff, but our librarian actually would have us read stuff from the library to us. But yeah, it would have been nice if there was like a spooky one. Mm-hmm. I would have appreciated it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the librarian was in the first episode. That must have been like a second or a third episode.
Yeah, maybe. I don't really remember because I watched all three like episodes that we wanted to do for research, and I've seen many other episodes like after that. I probably did not see all 130 existing episodes, but I saw quite a few because this was like a regular thing for me when I was a kid.
And these episodes are like an hour each. Even with the little featurettes at the end of each one, that's like 40 minutes with commercials. Like, this was an hour-long program.
Yeah.
I got, like, again, it may have been like a bad week for me, but I got tired halfway through, and I'm like, I can't make sense of this. I gotta do something else.
Absolutely. So, when they were filming this, how do you think they did it? Did you think, like, okay, now I'm in, I don't know, Griselda costume. Are we going to record, like, a bunch of Griselda skits right now? And, or do you think...
Oh, was that it?
Yeah, that's just a question. Like, how do you think they did this?
I think, given the assembly line schedule that they had to work with, that I think they filmed like every Griselda skit like day in, day out until they were fucking done. And then it's just like, okay, now put on your professor makeup. Like, it just would be it would be too costly to have him on set switching out makeups. So I would imagine, just for practicality's sake, they would have, well, I would say written out, but as we know, they don't do writing. So they probably just thought, we need 130 or, 120 2-minute blurbs. So just let's do what we can for 8 hours a day and then try it again tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
It just seemed to make sense. My only last complaint was like a lack of use for Vinny, because it would have been good to see him show up and interact with the other characters. Like, to see him like talk to an animal that gets brought in, or give, like, dare I say, an actual recipe to Griselda for her cooking show, because
yes.
he actually has cooking experience. Like, I saw some TV shows with Vinny on them as a guest cook, and he was right up there with them. The guy was a Renaissance man. He was able to detect art forgeries, because he was like that well versed in art. He was able to pick out forgeries that had been swapped into museums.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, this show, if you're a hardcore Vincent Price fan, this show is worth watching just for, like, the 5% of each episode that Vincent Price does.
And then you lament that that's all he does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then unfortunately, more Vincent Price would have been so good. You're right. Having him interact with some of the characters would have been just the absolute best.
And although we're pretty much done with at least this episode of Hilarious House of Frightenstein, as well as a general overview of the series, the YouTube video you sent me had an actual documentary, or, well, not so much a documentary, but just like a little 5-minute conversation with Billy Van before he died.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to find out, like, why he was such like a hammy character who was quick with jokes and ad-libs, was because, as he revealed, he was one of 5 children in a vaudevillian family. So he never really could have been anything else.
Yeah, that kind of makes a lot of sense, actually.
And then he revealed that there wasn't really much writing on the show. It was just them just goofing off and ad-libbing, which kind of makes it more impressive. Because if they were writing it, that these people would be, well, just coked out of their minds.
Right.
But no, it's just a bunch of people making up shit on the fly. So when you consider that, you just got to change your grading curve. And it's like, oh, shit, well, it's like someone flying a plane that's breaking up and just like holding the wings together with their hands and steering with their feet. It's like, wow, you actually managed to crash safely. All things considered, that was good. And he mentioned doing the librarian skit. He mentioned doing like all the skits in bulk, and he mentioned the librarian skit. How after one day of shooting 58 scenes, yes, 58
Jesus
scenes
Christ.
as the librarian, he said, "Keep rolling. I got one more." And to hear the Count Frightenstein himself, or the librarian, because he does it in the voice, and he tells this poem that starts off so nice and sweet, and it ends shockingly, jarringly, and it impressed me so much that you are going to be hearing it at the end of this show. So watch out for the outtake. It is worth it.
Yep, it sure is. Just to hear, like, I don't want to spoil it what happens, but just after this being part of my childhood and getting a refresher on it, like watching a few episodes on YouTube, to hear that was fuck. I laughed my ass off, man. That was so cool.
It automatically made me respect the entire show about 10% more. Just for that little 5-minute blurb at the end.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, guys. I know this was really a big departure from what we normally do. It was mostly just us babbling about an old TV show. But this was something that like really put me in the mood for Halloween. Just a part of my childhood, and it was part of my love for all things monster. So we didn't do it justice. We're going to include the link to the first episode of the Hilarious House of Frightenstein in the show notes. Please check it out.
So you'll be as caught up as me.
Exactly. You'll have all the same info that Mike does. So check it out. And of course, we've got our actual Halloween episode coming right up, and we got something that's going to be next week. Halloween's just around the corner. We got something special planned because something related to Halloween has a big anniversary coming up. And Mike and I actually talked about this before episode 1 of the show. We talked about doing this. Yeah, when we were first making plans to start the graveyard shift, this was an idea that we came up with, and we were going to do it for our first Halloween episode, Halloween last year, but because it had such a big anniversary coming up, we decided to hold off until this Halloween. So join us next week for that. It's going to be pretty awesome. But of course, we want to hear from you guys. Are you familiar with the Hilarious House of Frightenstein? Is this something you watched as a kid? Do you have memories of it? Is this something you just discovered since listening to this episode? Did you check out the link that we posted? And either way, what are your thoughts on it? You love it, hate it, you think we're crazy for even thinking about it? Let us know. You got a few ways to get a hold of us. You can email us at graveyardshiftpod@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at GYS_horrorpod. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/thegraveyardshiftpod. And of course on Instagram, instagram.com/thegraveyardshiftpod. If you're feeling particularly generous and want to help us out with some of the costs of running the show, you can head on over to patreon.com/graveyard. There, for as little as a $1 a month donation, you get to help us out with the cost of running the show, but also you get access to some really nice Patreon exclusive bonus content where we make some extra episodes that are just for our Patreon viewers. We do one once a month, and they can be a departure from what we normally do. Sometimes it's an extended episode of our regular feed. Sometimes we do something completely different. We'll do a horror movie, but we'll do a full synopsis of it right from start to finish, give you the entire thing and our thoughts on it. Sometimes we'll do video games. Sometimes we'll do TV shows. We'll do top 10 lists, all kinds of stuff. But you can help us out greatly with that. Of course, if you don't have the money to give us money, you can still help us out a ton by going on to whichever service you use to find our show, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, if you just run it from our social media, whatever. Rate, review, subscribe. In the long run, that's probably the best way to help us out. And if you do follow us on social media, thank you for that. share us on your pages with people you think that might be interested in listening to two of us talk about horror movies and other horror-related things. Mike, besides the Graveyard Shift, what other stuff you got going on?
I got Technobabble with Mike and with me and Rich talking about tech, science, amazing breakthroughs, and just devices and gizmos that are really neat. And you can find that on Technobabble. Just look for that, and done by Mike and Rich. Just ignore any other Technobabbles. They're not worth listening to. They're really not. And then there's also the Playing with Power podcast, which will eventually start recording after my co-host manages to silence his family at a reasonable time, and then he can record with me. But that's the one where we read Nintendo Power issue, first to last, front to back. We talk about the old gaming magazine that made games beatable before the internet came along. And we're currently in covering the year of 1996. So a lot of N64 goodness coming. And on a related note, there's also the taste test, which will, I guess we can announce we've got the Halloween grab bag for 2018. That's in that feed, so just look for the taste test, retro gaming with flavor, and you can hear a certain Graveyard Shift double team tackling some old NES games. And as a special bonus, you'll be able to check out our Facebook page and enjoy the link to that episode, because it won't be in the feed because it's not movies.
Yeah, but we'll share it on social media, and that was fun. I got to be a part of that one. That was great. I actually got to talk about some horror-themed video games, so that was pretty fun.
It sure was. I got to discover Gremlins 2. Surprisingly decent game.
It was. I was pleasantly surprised with that one. Not at all surprised by the other two. In good or bad, not surprising at all.
Well, I'm fading, so...
Yeah, Mike is about to pass out. I really got to go take some cold meds. Guys, this was a lot of fun. I know this is a big departure, probably a lot of just rambling, but it was a lot of fun to talk about something that was such a cool part of my childhood. I absolutely love the show. I understand that if you're discovering it as an adult now, it's going to look ridiculous, but as a kid, this was so cool. I absolutely loved it. So check it out and let us know what you think. We are going to be back next week with our actual official Halloween episode. And so that's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to talk about this. And I don't want to give any spoilers whatsoever. And if it sucks, it was Mike's idea. But anyway, that's going to be for next week. Sorry, what was that?
Oh, just agreeing with you. It is my fault.
It was your idea, but it's my fault because I thought it was a good idea, so I went along with it. I still stand by that. I think it's a good idea. But anyway, you're going to find out what that's all about next week. It's going to be a very special Halloween episode, and I cannot wait. Hope you guys can't wait either. But until then, I'm Sheldon.
And I'm sleepy.
We're both sleepy, pal. But thank you for joining us for another episode of The Graveyard Shift.
Welcome to the library. Hello, Horace. Hello, Polly. And hello to you. Are you ready to be frightened out of your wits? Because I am the boss frightener.
It was the wolf, the librarian. Now, I told you we tried to make 16 segments every day. And I desperately wanted to get out of this makeup.
Ready to be terrified.
On this one day, I got on a fantastic roll because the character, if you recall, comes in, knocks the books over, goes over, and just whips open a page and There's some dumb little poem, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, whatever. Anyway, I finished 58. And then they said from the control room, okay, Billy, that's a wrap. And I said, no, it's not. I want to do one more. I said, no, man, it's okay. We got it. It's a wrap. I said, no, one more, please. Okay. So I went and I just grabbed the book and I threw it open. And I recalled a poem from when I was a kid.
Now, are you ready for horror? I'll give you horror. As I awoke this morning, when all sweet things are born, a robin perched upon my sill to signal the coming morn. The bird was fragile, young and gay, and sweetly it did sing. The thought of happiness and joy into my heart did bring. Am I getting you? I smiled softly at the song, and as it paused, a lull, I gently closed the window and crushed its fucking skull.